IVM.
There's a quick survey to fill out on ivmpodcast.com/survey. It lets us know a little bit more about who's listening to us. And you know what? We're going to do a few prizes. So, we'll do a random drawing of maybe 10 people and we'll send you all some swag. Remember, that's ivmpodcast.com/survey where you can fill out the survey.
India is a country where fair skin is revered, where fairness products dominate the markets, and where financial and romantic success is pinned on fair skin. Colorism affects the lives of millions of Indians, but especially dark-skinned girls who are socialized to believe that dark is ugly. This impacts their confidence and self-esteem. In this episode of the Big Talk About Tiny Humans, Devishobha and I unpack skin color esteem and discuss how parents can cultivate a healthy awareness of skin diversity in their children.
Almost every job in the world requires training, except parenting.
You need to learn parenting on the job, and that can be really hard.
Here on Big Talk About Tiny Humans, we want to help you navigate the world of parenting better and make your lives a little bit easier.
Hi, I'm Meghna.
And hi, I'm Devishobha.
Every week, we bring you the best research on parenting,
top tips from experts,
and actionable strategies to confront the numerous challenges that all parents and educators face.
So let's get started, shall we?
You know what my daughter said to me the other day? Mama, look at my hand. See, my skin is darker than your skin. My daughter's comments really stopped me in my tracks. Was she becoming aware of differences in skin color at the age of 7? Was she beginning to feel bad about being darker? I sat with her and had a chat. Turns out she was only comparing skin colors. It was a source of fascination for her. It was an innocent comparison. She was simply describing what she saw, untainted by the prejudices that adults carry about skin color. India is a country where fair skin is revered, where fairness products dominate the markets, and where financial and romantic success is pinned on fair skin. Skin color plays an important part in mate selection in arranged Indian marriages. People, and especially women, are discriminated against simply due to the shade of their skin. So today, Devishobha and I are going to discuss colorism and how it impacts us and our children's self-esteem and what can we do about it. Hi, Shobha. How are you doing?
Hi, Meghna. Doing great. It's exam week for my kids, so it's a little hectic.
Oh,
but otherwise doing good. Yeah.
Wow. I hope you're not very stressed.
No, not at all. Not
awesome. Okay.
Yeah.
So this is what we're talking about today, right?
Yeah.
Skin color esteem. And I know this is a topic that you feel very strongly about.
Yes.
Right. Why is it that you feel so strongly about this topic? Have you experienced anything? Have your daughters experienced anything? Do you relate to this topic in any way?
Absolutely. And I think I can say this for most of India. I can speak for myself while I'm speaking for most of the girls in India as well. So I was raised as one of 3 children in a middle class household. And even though my parents were very forward looking and, made it a point to give us a very good education, my parents never brought up, especially my father, never brought up skin color. But it was really unavoidable. When we were in a family gathering, there used to be very indirect remarks, indirect advice thrown our way, to
how to lighten the skin.
Yeah, to look more presentable,
Presentable. Oh my God.
So, and also there was this constant feeling, right, that we were a source of worry, right, because of our dark skin. Like I have dark skin and my sister has dark skin and one of my sisters is light skin. So there's also, an unconscious comparison, right?
Oh my God.
So though it was never between us, the sisters never did it, but
outsiders made you conscious of that.
Yeah. So
difference.
Yeah. So what I'm trying to say is, even though the parents can be very cognizant of the fact that it can affect their children, it is still very hard for parents to shield their children completely from these kinds of talk and influences. But there's still a lot we can do. And one of the things that, it's funny that we think that this is very rampant and very prevalent in India. But the truth is that colorism is, in fact, present all over the world.
That's true.
Right?
Absolutely true. Yeah.
And it's just that as a matter of, I think it's because of colonial hangover that we still carry it over, but it is still very much present all over the world. In fact, the term colorism was actually coined by a Westerner, by the Pulitzer Prize winning author Alice Walker. She coined the term colorism in 1982. And this colorism term was coined to point out how much of colorism goes along with racism in the West. So this was actually first came out in an article in Time magazine that said difference between colorism and racism, right? So this is prevalent all over the world. In fact, China, light skin is preferred, way more than even, so Chinese are all light skin compared to India. But even there, Chinese can make out perhaps the shades and colors, right? And there's still a lot of discrimination. Japan, there's a lot of premium given on physical appearance and looks, and South Korea there's an entire industry on thriving on plastic surgery, and in fact there are so many people, so many young girls known to commit suicide because of the ill effects of extreme pressure due to physical appearance, right?
Yeah.
So this is not just prevalent in India, but India has its own flavor of colorism, right? So
what flavor is that? What do you think? How is that different from the colorism that is rampant in the West? So why are we obsessed with fair skin?
So one of the things is that, see, because India is a fairly large country, and India is also a very diverse country. In fact, all of us can confidently say that India is one of the most diverse countries in the world, right? Every state has its own cuisine, every state has its own language, every state has its own, even you can differentiate people by their physical features because they look so distinct, right? So India's colorism comes from the fact that there is this desire for one-upmanship between the races, between the communities within India. If you have observed the movies, right, if you have watched some of the movies, Hindi movies, especially of yesteryears, even now, there's a stereotyping of South Indians, right? And they say like, Madrasi is Madrasi.
Yes.
So Madrasis are all painted in one color, whereas South Indians, we know that Madrasis are just like one small community.
Yes.
Among South Indians, right? So if you go to the north, they'll say things like, you can do this to not look like a Madrasi. What they actually mean is that you can do this to actually lighten your skin. So if you look at it scientifically, most of us Indians have dark skin because of our geographical location. We are situated very close to the equator. And, sunscreen, melanin is a very natural sunscreen, and it helps our skin protect from UV rays. And that is the reason most of us have dark skin. So in India, there's also this obsession with only marrying within the same community, within the same caste. And there is also, very tight set of requirements. I wouldn't say this is not there in other parts of the world. If you look at, communities at very close quarters, this is prevalent everywhere. It's prevalent everywhere. But since we know India so well, one of the things that really highlights this every day, in our faces is, one, we see, everyday common people asking for fair-skinned, wheaty-skinned brides or grooms or whatever. And there's so much of, premium placed on skin, right? The skin tone. And it is actually supplemented by, cinema, especially
Bollywood. Oh God.
It's supplemented by the fairness
cream industry.
In fact, I have my stats here. Just let me read it out to you here. It says that India's skin whitening market is actually expected to achieve an annual market revenue of $720 million by 2023. That is by next year. And it is currently dominated by Fair and Lovely, which is again another story which I'll share with you in a minute. This is a fairness cream that was launched in 1975 and still today it holds more than 50% of market share.
Yeah.
And we know all the ridiculous ads they bring out, right?
Yeah.
We've seen this for ages. Imami, Unilever, in fact, has pulled out fairness cream products out of the market because of a backlash after the Black Lives Matter incident, right?
And it was renamed as Glow and Lovely, but that's stupid, right? Because everybody knows what that means. Just branding it as Glow instead of Fair doesn't really change what the cream does.
And
why people are buying it.
Absolutely. And even worse is the fact that they brought out another range of products for men as well. And they say, right, it's fair and handsome. So, the kind of compounding effect that it has on society's, mindset and thinking is just, incredible. And it can have a lot of adverse effects on very young minds. Like you said, your daughter, came to you and, she started noticing skin color at the age of 7. Thank God for the fact that, she brought it up in a very neutral manner. But there are several instances where children get teased. Like my daughter, she was 4 when she came and told me that, I don't look good, I look ugly. And I said, why do you think so?
Oh no.
And she said, because I have black skin.
She actually said black skin.
She said black skin. And so she was only 4 at that time. So imagine the kind of, so obviously she didn't get it from the heavens, right? It didn't drop out. So obviously somebody has said it to her, and somebody has said it to her, most likely her classmates, and somebody has put it inside the head of the classmate there, right? Learn to discriminate, to know
that this is not okay. It should, almost like the fair skin is supposed to be default, and if you're not fair skinned, you're not the default, and so therefore you're different, and therefore we should tease you or point it out to you. It's just so unfortunate. Yeah, so that makes a lot of sense. We talked about why colorism is so rampant in India and why Indians are obsessed with fair skin. We're going to take a short break now. And after the break, we're going to discuss more aspects of colorism, how it impacts our young boys and girls, and what we can do to instill skin color esteem in our children. Stay tuned.
Hey, everybody, it's been another great week on the IVM Podcast Network. On The Habit Coach, we've hit our 700th episode. That's 700. Public speaker and professional development guide Tonya Lyon speaks to Ashton about how mindfulness and stillness can be transformative. On Ek Chuski Finance, Priyanka has an interesting story which urges women to take charge of their personal finances. On Pulyabazi, Pranay and Saurav debate whether prohibition is an effective policy when it comes to curbing alcohol consumption. On Audio Gyan, Kedar speaks to Hemant Jha. He is the founder of Honest Structures, and they discuss designing aesthetically enticing products. And on Marathi Khidki Tun, the Deshmukhs introduce us to some lesser-known heroes that are working towards the betterment of society. Do follow us on social media. We're IVM Podcasts on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And remember, if you enjoyed this show or any of our other shows for that matter, do please tell a friend. Also, don't forget to rate us on any of the platforms you're listening to us on. You can check us out on YouTube as well. On ivmpodcast.com/YouTube, we have a list of all of our YouTube channels. Do check out if your favorite show is available as full video. We are also doing a small listener survey to better understand how you respond to our shows and advertising on the network. We'd really appreciate it if you could spare a few minutes to fill it out. It helps us build better shows for you. And finally, we'd like to thank our sponsors for this week: SBI Life Insurance, India Water Portal, and Jupiter, a digital banking app. Thank you so much for making this possible.
Welcome back. We're having a freewheeling conversation about colorism in India and how it impacts our kids. So Shobha, I know that a lot of us obviously don't want to, hopefully most of us, parents do not want to propagate colorism, right? But there are still ways in which we end up doing that, whether it's unconsciously or consciously. So can you tell us, how do parents actually propagate colorism without even realizing it sometimes?
Yeah, sure. So some of the very common ways that we do it very unconsciously is, one, we sometimes talk about our own appearance in a negative light in front of our children, which can bring their appearance into their consciousness also in a negative manner, right? So that happens quite a lot. The other way is when we express worries about our children and also include their physical appearance somehow, right? There's a lot of, like we were talking about, how a lot of urban families are still worried about getting good grooms for their girls,
Yeah.
and how their skin color can be an advantage or a disadvantage, right? In their prospects of success. And success, unfortunately, still in most families, still means getting a good husband, getting a good family to be married into, which is all good because, as the Harvard study says, half your success depends on the life partner you choose. It's not like, that's not an important facet of your life. It is important. But then expressing worry about over something like that and bringing aspect like skin color and how it might affect those prospects is really not a good way to introduce, a child's concept or self-image, into their consciousness. So that is definitely not done. But we do that a lot. I think one of the other ways that we also propagate this thought into in children is by unconsciously comparing siblings.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
And I can give you lots of examples where parents do not definitely want the consequences of it because they do not think that far, right?
Yeah.
But the kind of consequences they do get, it can be very shocking for them. And sometimes whole lives can pass even without their knowing that what they said or did had such a bad impact on their children. It can be very shocking for them, right?
So what is this impact, Shobha? Like, what is, I know that, research tells us that the psychological impact of such comments, of being compared, of being told that, what, you don't measure up, you're not fair enough. So that means that you're not good enough. Just wanted to find out, how does colorism impact, what psychological impact does it carry on children?
So the psychological impact, scientific studies have proved that children who are exposed to talks about colorism, and especially when they see themselves as not fitting, a particular image of good physical appearance, it can have very negative impacts in terms of their mental health, their self-image. Mental health in the sense that they can get into deep depression. Sometimes they do not even show it. It's very hard for parents and other adults around them to even detect that their child is undergoing something that they're not able to express. And it can, lead to very, like we spoke about suicide the last time, right? It can have very detrimental effects. It can, social media, in fact, we know that social media, people heckling over social media has had such a bad impact that suicide rates have risen to the top in the last 5 years or so, just because there's freewheeling comments on appearance and skin color, and there is no discernment. First of all, there is no education about this. So why is that happening? One is because of lack of supervision, because adults, parents and teachers as well, there's much less supervision these days. So children are allowed a free reign, and they have lots of exposure, much more than they're capable of handling. So they have to handle themselves in the physical world, and now they also have to handle their digital identities, right? So handling two different things. So what happens, what in social media we generally see that a lot of people create fake IDs. And why is that? And they create these fake IDs with the pictures of some of their favorite celebrities, people who are so-called good looking. And that is because that is also a consequence of their wanting to fill in the shoes of somebody else vicariously, right? So that is that leads to a lot of depression. There's a lot of dual identity syndrome, a lot of confusion in who they are and what they can be, and finding their original inner strength can be very hard for them, because they just kind of hovering around what identity they need to latch on to, at least to please others, right? So that itself takes away a lot of their energies while growing up, which is not a healthy way to grow up.
And do you think this is more rampant among girls than boys? Do you think colorism impacts girls more than boys?
Well, if you look at the data and even if you look at our own experiences, definitely girls are under much more pressure to look good, to behave in a certain manner, to please, to fit into a certain mold, to wear certain types of clothes.
Correct.
I mean, the list can go on. So definitely, I will not be, making a wrong statement if I say that definitely girls are under much more pressure, because they are under so much more pressure to fit in. Right. In fact, my daughter, she is 16, and I have these conversations with her when she has to talk about women empowerment and identities.
That's
and all
nice
that.
to know.
Yeah. So she in fact told me that there was an experiment conducted in a school where both boys and girls were given the same types of clothes to wear. Right. And I mean, it was apart from the uniform, and both of them were a group of boys, a group of girls. They were asked to wear the same kind of clothes, and nobody picked on the boys. No comment at all. So it was like a free reign to everyone, free pass. Everyone was happy. But the girls, the same kind of clothes, they had to, the principal had a talk with them, then their parents, then they had to, undergo scrutiny about, what they're doing with other parts of their lives. And so it was a lot more scrutiny for the girls for just wearing the same kind of clothes, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, it just shows that the kind of social pressure that girls face, right?
No, absolutely. No, I completely agree. I mean, even in schools and colleges, if you see the lens of strictness with regard to how you present and your attire and, how short your skirt is and all of that is much harsher on girls than it is on boys. Right. I mean, a woman's body is up to much more scrutiny than a man's or a boy's body. So so I'm not surprised that perhaps colorism does impact girls more than boys. I mean, it's not more common. It's more common in the case of women that, those matrimonial columns we were talking about.
Absolutely.
Fair, tall, slim. It's much less likely with men, and a man can go by, if he's wheatish complexion or even if he's dark, but not so much women. So, So let's talk about what we can do, right? What can a parent do to instill skin color esteem in their kids?
Yeah. So one of the things that we can start with is definitely open conversations, right, around skin color, skin. So one of the things, okay, even before we start with conversations, one thing that I personally have, something against fairy tales is that a lot of them propagate the idea of just physical outer beauty, and they actually box female characters into these delicate, good for nothing people who are just waiting for others to come and say, do something about them, do something for them to live good lives. I mean, these fairy tales, for example, what is that? The Sleeping Beauty? Or no, the Snow White thing, right?
No, all the traditional Disney, fairy tales. But luckily, I also see a changing trend, right? I mean, there is
the Rebel Girls changed the trend because that's the reason it became such a big hit. And do you know that the Rebel Girls was actually crowdfunded? It was not even published.
Wow, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, it was a crowdfunded project by Kickstarter. It was not even traditionally published, but it became such a raving hit that publishers lined up, and then HarperCollins actually acquired the rights to republish, reprint them. So it was a crowd. So yeah, just imagine the kind of wants that people had. People already wanted a change. They were sick and tired of those, those fairy tales.
Knight in shining armor.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, so one is that please, if you can, please move away from those molds of stories, and please do read Rebel Girls. I mean, kind of stories like Rebel Girls to your girls and to your boys also. There is a version of Rebel Girls for boys as well. It's called Boys Who Dare to Be Different. So that's the same format as Rebel Girls. So do that. So before that, so there will be some time during the growing phase of your child where they will come to you and say something about their physical appearance. It could be skin color, it could be something else. they will say that, like my child came up to me, your child came up to you, and they will say that, this is probably not right with me. And then that's when you actually open up the conversation and you actually listen to them. And see, that's the only way you will gauge where they are getting these ideas from, right? So when you listen, so instead of don't blow off what they are saying, because we have this tendency, we say, hey, no, you're beautiful, no, this is all great, no, you look great. So instead of that, the best way is to listen to where they get their ideas from and why they think what they're thinking. The second thing I would say is...
Sorry, I would like to know what is the harm in saying, no, it's okay. You're good. You look fine. What is the issue? Like, what is the harm in saying that to a child?
So the harm is that there is, when you go ahead and say, no, you look fine, you run the risk of not understanding the depth of your child's concerns. So now the child will see that, okay, mama thinks that I'm fine, but she doesn't really understand what I'm thinking, right?
So you're in a way also invalidating what the child is bringing up.
Yeah, right. So listening is part one in validating the child's concerns, right? So step one. And then once you've established the child's trust in, making them believe and making them know that they can come to you with these issues, then you ask open-ended questions like, you can ask what makes you feel that way, or in what ways do you feel like this? What ways do you feel not beautiful, or what ways do you feel lesser than, what you did, what you felt yesterday, or to what happened today that made you feel this way? So this is asking open-ended questions that would really help you understand where these thoughts are coming from and where this was seeded in the child's mind, right? Then the next thing is to rephrase her statements, right? And this is just an exercise in making her understand that you get her perspective, right? It's not that you want to go with what she's saying. It's just this is a process of establishing trust, right? So then you say like, okay, what I hear you saying is, blah, blah, da, da, da. And then it sounds like you are concerned about da, 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 so it's like basically just understanding where she's coming from and helping her express her concerns at that phase of her life, because when a 4-year-old's concerns are different from an 8-year-old's concerns, and 8-year-old's concerns are different from a teenager's concerns. So the process of establishing this trust will go over years. So it's very important to establish that channel of communication from very early on, which answers your question of why not just say, no, this is what I think, you're fine, right? So that and then replace those whatever she thinks right about herself with affirmations. And affirmations should be not coming from a place of what you think, but coming from a place of making her see her strengths, her strengths, her or his strengths also, I should say, because a lot of boys are also heckled for dark skin, though they are lesser. But so affirmations by drawing on their inner character strengths. Like it once so happened that my daughter, she's a good dancer. And it was not at that time, she not established her love for dancing, she was just experimenting, right? And when she joined a new school, and she had danced in front of her classroom group, and she didn't receive very positive comments, because how middle graders can be, right? So she came back home, she was very disappointed, she didn't eat her lunch, she was in tears, and she said, you know what, I'm not going to dance anymore. So I listened to her, and I didn't have anything to say, so because I didn't understand what was happening. She was just very angry, very very resistant to whatever I was saying. So I just kept quiet, and I said, okay, now first finish your lunch, because I knew half of her anger was because she was also hungry. So
hangry,
yeah. And then after her lunch, so then we again had a chat, and then I took out a piece of paper, and I said, and I actually sat with her, and I made a list of all the things, right, that they had said, and all the reasons that they could have said that, right? So somebody said, you don't dance well, or you look ugly, or whatever. So there are different comments that she had received. So I wrote down the comments, and I wrote down the reasons behind those comments. So you don't dance well, okay, fine, they think you don't dance well, but okay, then what is the basis of their comments? Do they dance better than you? right?
Hmm.
So that is not the case. Then obviously they don't know about dance enough to comment on you. So it's coming from somewhere else. So leave it. So this is not something that you have to worry about. Just focus on your dancing, right?
It's in
So
a
then-
way what you did with your daughter is a technique that we use in therapy. It's
Mhm.
called challenging the negative thoughts. I mean,
Right.
this was a negative comment, but we
Hmm.
do a version of it where those, comments by others become a part of your inner dialogue, your self-talk, and you learn to challenge it because, a lot of us take it at face value that, if I'm receiving some comment or even if I'm thinking of a negative thought, oh, it must be true. So
Right.
that differentiation, that just because somebody's saying something does not necessarily make it true, is a very important one, even in therapy, to sort of learn to wrap your head around. Because if you think about it, that's what we do all day, right? Any thought we get, we tend to believe in it. Any comment that anybody makes, we tend to believe it, right? And beat ourselves up for it. So
Yeah.
I think what you did with your daughter was kind of like therapy.
Right. Yeah. So I'm glad to say that she dances still today, and she dances
Oh
very
yeah,
well.
I've seen
And
her
she is-
videos. She dances very well. Yes.
and she puts out her videos on YouTube, on
Oh,
Instagram,
she
on public. Yeah,
does.
she is totally public with her dancing, and I'm really glad
Beautiful.
she does that. So this is how you counter their narrative about themselves, right? So this is I
Yeah.
mean, you explained the process beautifully, and this is one of the things that we miss out because by the time we come to this stage, it would have fizzled out. But this is a very important step in this whole process. And then the next step is actually expose them to the right things. So there are lots of books. There is also this wonderful activity by Crayola. Okay, it is called multicultural coloring. Okay, and what they do is they have these different shades of colors, and each of them gets one color, and then you can actually make a game of matching your skin tone to the color. So this is
Oh,
a wonderful,
nice.
yeah, this is a beautiful activity that can be carried out in classrooms. It can be carried out in small groups by parents, by friends, right? And even by parents themselves with their children. So that's a great activity. There's this book by Rebecca Manari. It's called Brown Like Dosa Chiki.
Oh, I love that book.
Yeah. I think I had put it out on my group, right?
Yeah. I
Yeah,
read
right.
that book to my daughter, by the way, after
Yeah.
that incident that I described at the beginning. And
Yeah.
actually, that's what really helped her understand the difference
Yeah.
when we reframed her skin color as resembling that of dosa and mine is bread.
Right. Absolutely. So this is a great book. Brown like dosas, samosas, and sticky
Sticky
chicky.
chicky.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is a wonderful book. And
Yeah.
this was published by Fun OK Please. That time, which is
So,
So I would say we can summarize these steps into 5 phases, and we can call it the mnemonic LORRE, LORRE, which is L for listen, O for ask open-ended questions, R for rephrase, again R for reaffirm, right? Whatever through their character strengths, and then E for expose to the right things. There are lots of activities, books, and even talk, like keep talking about who are the great successes that they can look up to, despite their adversities, not in terms of just skin color, but skin color is just one thing, but there are so many real adversities that people overcome, right?
Yeah.
So we can talk about that and
Yeah.
give some perspective. So
sounds brilliant. LORRE sounds brilliant. So I think that's a very useful guideline for parents out there who want to, whether your child is facing colorism or not, I think these are still important conversations to have, right? Because they also sensitize children to how to behave with their peers who may be, say, dark skinned. Right. So I think it's not, so we can't say that, I'm nicely cocooned. This is something that doesn't affect me. So, you know what, I won't care. This is something that affects everyone. Right. So
Right.
I would just like to ask you one more question, Shobha. Like you mentioned this in between when you were talking about your own self and your siblings, that it was always usually the comments by relatives. It was usually outsiders coming in and couching it in, these indirect comments and, oh, you should look more presentable. So how can parents respond to these comments about skin color of their child? Comments that are made by relatives and outsiders, which are not in good taste, which may be either couch or maybe as direct as, "Arey, ye to bahut kali hai," like "Shadi kaise hogi" type of comments are actually not uncommon. So, how can parents respond to these kind of comments?
So one is, if there are not if you have established their order of importance in your lives, I mean, I would say if you can save your emotional energy, step one is if you can do that, please walk away. Number two, if you can ignore, please ignore or change the subjects. Third is if you can, right, if you can retort in a very polite way and say that, the world is changing and it is not hooked on these things anymore. And anyway, it's high time that we look beyond skin color, because there's so much more inside of the girl or the child to see and learn from. Tomorrow, who knows that, you may be learning something from her that you didn't even know in your whole long life, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that might look cheeky at that time, but it is so true, right? And
Yeah.
sometimes you just have to say that. And then the fourth option would be to educate in a proper manner. Educate if the person there has some scope of listening or understanding, then I think you have to take the route of education and really tell them about what's changing and why these kinds of comments can really be harmful in ways that they do not know. And really refrain, not just because she's my child, but really refrain because this is very insensitive, right? So yeah, I mean, education is good. And like I said, with relatives, all of these can sound very cheeky, but they need to be done at some time.
I would, in fact, take a slightly different point of view here, Shobha. And I would say that silence, I don't think, is a good idea, because it might give your child the impression that either the topic is off limits for you or that a biased remark is actually acceptable to you. I would go in for the other options that you outlined and say something like, have a firm reply ready, like, no thanks, we're proud of our skin color. Or something even like cheeky, in the spirit of cheeky. The remedy to my daughter's skin color doesn't really lie in a plastic bottle. It probably lies in people like you changing your own deep-seated biases. So it's like isko haldi laga do, isko fair and lovely de do kind of stuff is bullshit, right? And we need to call out on the bullshit. Otherwise, we cannot even hope to make a dent on those. Forget about making a dent. We can't even begin to change, to even touch those deep-seated biases, that we carry around skin color. So I mean, I would probably say that because children look so much to their parents for cues, and because they learn so much from our actions as well as our words, I would model a very healthy standing up for my daughter in front of any of these ridiculous remarks. Rather than opting for silence or moving away.
Well, silence and moving away only in cases where it really does not,
matter.
In cases where it does not matter and you have no chance of seeing that person anywhere anymore. Like probably you'll meet a random stranger who will give you advice about how you might be, you might have already had your children and they'll still give you advice about how to produce a fair child. So, in these cases, definitely walking away is so much better, because I have seen cases where I have been traveling and somebody sits next to me and says, you know what, have you tried this? Have you done this?
Are you serious? Are you serious?
So in that case, definitely, why not? I mean, why do you have to even argue with such a person? Because you're never going to see them again. But yeah, in cases where you're likely to see them again, and you're likely going to see them again in front of your child, then yes, definitely all of these cheeky responses do matter. Yes.
Yeah, in front of your child is when I would say that maybe silence is not such a smart strategy. But yeah, I guess it's just about outlining your priorities, really.
Yeah.
Brilliant. So, okay. So I would also like to tell you something else. So not only was reframing helpful to, my daughter, what also helped her when I explained to her how skin color is caused by the amount of melanin in our skin. And we actually reframed the melanin in her skin as a protective shield. So you know what? It was like when she understood that the skin color that I carry, the melanin that is there in my skin, it is actually protecting me against a whole lot of diseases, including skin cancer, right? Because that's the natural defense. And then we saw countries on the map which are close to the equator, which are populated with people with higher melanin.
Right.
That all of this sort of really helped her. It brought together, widened her perspective about even the kind of diversity that we have in skin color, not just in India, but across the world.
Yeah.
And she was fascinated, and she told me, I would love to visit these countries. And she really does want to visit Africa, you know. So, I think science really helps as well, right?
Absolutely.
I agree. Reading books, exposing them to the right media, not Bollywood, the
Yeah.
gore mukhre pe kala kala chashma kind of nonsense is
Yeah.
not something that we need. But
Even today, there's so much.
even
of this.
today, yes, of course, there is this song, Tujhe Dekh Ke Goriya, Beyonce Sharma Jayegi. There was such a backlash against that song that they actually had to recall it and replace it with the word Dunya Sharma Jayegi. Can you beat that? I mean, I was so proud of Indians that they actually protested against such ridiculous lyrics.
Definitely. And one encouraging trend that we're also seeing these days is a lot of celebrities are also backing off from doing these ridiculous Fair and Lovely ads. There's one actor called Sai Pallavi in the Telugu.
Yeah. I read about that.
Yeah, who's refused. And she, it's very remarkable what she does. She appears in cinema without makeup. So she comes with acne and all. The complete. Yeah, so she is with no hair done, no makeup, replete with acne and everything. And she does a fab job with her acting. And I think Kangana Ranaut also refused to do a Fair and Lovely ad. So I mean that celebrities are speaking up, and that's a very encouraging.
That's encouraging, yeah. And in fact, some of the celebrities who already done fairness ads, when they forayed into the film industry, they have actually apologized when there was a backlash.
Right.
They were forced to, or they finally got some sense, whatever it was. They actually apologized and said that, you know what, I should not have done that.
Right.
Right. Yeah. Thanks so much, Shobha. This was very interesting. And I really hope that a lot of parents, again, as I said, whether you have a child who is dark-skinned or not, I think these conversations are conversations that we just must completely, absolutely have with our kids. I really hope all of you enjoyed listening to this as much as we enjoyed talking about colorism. Until next time. So that's our episode for today. Thank you for listening to Big Talk About Tiny Humans, our podcast for parents and educators.
Hope you enjoyed it, and don't forget to share it with your friends and family.
Listen and subscribe to Big Talk About Tiny Humans on the IVM Podcasts app, website, and all major audio platforms. We are available everywhere.
You can follow us on social media and online. Meghna is at The Therapist Mommy on Instagram and YouTube. And you can check out her website, raisingfamilyacademy.com, for a transformative course on raising a child with emotional intelligence.
And Devishobha is at KidsKintha on Twitter and Instagram. And check out kidskintha.com for in-depth articles and events on parenting and child development.
While you're at it, do also check out other great shows from the IVM Podcasts network at shows.ivmpodcasts.com. And IVM is on social media at IVM Podcasts on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram.
We'll catch you again on our next episode.
Ladies, I'm sure you will relate to it if I say that we are constantly busy with work, studies, cooking, and what not. And amidst all of this, we often forget an important element that needs our desperate attention: finance. So here we are, bringing to you SBI Life Presents A Sip of Finance, a women-exclusive podcast where we will teach you how to manage personal finances in a simple and straightforward way with your host, Priyanka Acharya, a finance expert who's been in the industry for 14 plus years. And not just in English, but in 7 more languages. So tune in every Tuesday for fresh episodes on the IVM Podcast Network and all major podcast streaming platforms.
Habits? Routines? How exactly do they help us get better? Well, to simplify it for you, tune in to the Habit Coach podcast. I am Ashton Doctor, and I'm going to be here to help you get better daily with some simple, easy-to-do habits that you can easily adapt to your life. So tune in to the Habit Coach podcast from Monday to Friday, because I believe that awesome lives start with awesome habits.